Welcome to Ink Well Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I'm your host, Reggie Key, and today I got my man, my Maryland brother, my University of Delaware kinfolk, Dane. You go by Dane? You still going by Dane or Don? What is it?
Yeah, I go to all of it, all good.
Of it? Yeah. Dane, Don, Ainsworth. What's happening?
All good, brothers. Good to see you, man. Good to catch up.
Yeah. So you reached out to me randomly, wishing me a happy new year. And once I was like, who this? and realized, it was you, like it was instant for us to just reconnect. And it seemed like just kismet. It seemed like good timing to just, get face to face and catch up, which we did prior to, us getting this recording. And hopefully, this allows us to kind of stay in contact with one another. Cause I do feel like, you being from Maryland, you going to the University of Delaware, and then when I moved out to Illinois, you was like, 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from the family. It just seemed like we got some ties and some unfinished business, so to speak. So
for sure.
Catch up with you again, man.
Yeah, likewise. It felt like, I know it's been a minute, but like, it's like we picked up where we left off. You got me caught up. I got you caught up. I feel bad because like, I don't do a good enough job, like just keeping up with folks, and so like, one of the things I said for this year is like, I'm gonna do a better job with maintaining relationships and use somebody I respect and, holding high regard. So I was like, let me reach out to my brother, see how he's doing, of the family as well. So yeah, I'm honored to be on here, man. So thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. I'm just thankful that it wasn't a bot. I was like, man, this seemed like somebody I know, but if I respond to this and then it's like, hey, I'm from Nigeria, I'm like, man,
send me some money.
I'm glad it was you, Don. So let's get right into it, man. I gotta start with this question. Do you consider yourself to be a genius?
No, sir.
Okay. You are in good company. The majority of people who I interview, the majority of people who I present this information to in workshop form, they don't see themselves as genius. And I understand that there's a humility that's involved in that. I don't know if you watched the Genius documentary on Kanye West, but of course, you know how he feels about himself.
Yeah, I know that's my guy.
Yeah, but Rhyme Fest, did you see this? Did you see this documentary I'm about to talk about?
No, I have not.
No, this is no spoilers. Rhyme Fest and him are having a conversation. Rhyme Fest helped him pen a lot of Jesus Walks, one of his bigger hits, right? And so Rhyme Fest was like, nah, dude, you can't call yourself genius. That's something that somebody else has to call you. And Kanye was like, I'm not gonna wait for somebody else to put that on me when I know what I offer. Because everybody rejected him as a rapper when he first came out. So he had a chip on his shoulder. So he was like, look,
absolutely. Yeah.
He's like, if nobody else is gonna affirm me, I'm gonna affirm me. And I get that, but there's balance to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when we talk about humility, we always talk about one perspective, which is to not think too highly of yourself, but we forget to pay attention to the other side of the spectrum, which is to not think too lowly of yourself either.
Right. Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah. So funny thing is, like, I've been called a genius before by my wife, but she was being sarcastic. But I took it though.
Yeah, I received it. That is how it goes. Like we only hear it in sarcasm. Yeah. And for us in particular, as Black men in this country, Don, it's important that we don't walk around and if we don't know enough to have a high expectation for who we are and how people see us, there's plenty of people waiting to tell us like who we are and where our place is. And it's not in a respectful high place. And so when I come before youth, I'm like, look, I want you to know outside of knowing your name, you got to be able to see the genius in you. Because if you don't see it, you'll start to take on labels that other people see you as. So if anybody puts anything on you that's less than what your name is and that you're a genius, then you should be like, nah, that's not who I am. You need to come with some respect, not expecting it in an arrogant way, not getting, full-blown Kanye West, but just having a level of self-respect and self-affirmation so that you are valued.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully, I'm gonna end the interview the same way I start. Hopefully, with the content that I'm going to share with you, you'll have maybe a different answer towards the end. We'll see. All right.
Fair enough.
My follow-up question is this: who comes to mind when you hear that word genius? First image, first name that comes to mind.
For me, is this guy Eric Adolphi. It's a guy I've worked with over the last couple of years. But when you started talking about Kanye and just giving me a little bit more background about the idea of genius and everything else, I started thinking. And for me, when I think of genius, I think of someone that's super creative, like super, super creative. And I don't consider myself to be super creative. I'm an engineer. So I looked at myself as more STEM and less arts with creativity. And so a lot more practical. So I'm a problem solver, but not necessarily like super creative, more like the obvious answer is what I'll come up with. Because that's the way I was trained, right? It's like, it's math, 2 + 2 is 4, it's one answer. Versus when you're creative, no, come up with an answer that nobody's ever thought of. And unfortunately, I wasn't trained that way. But more and more, I'm trying to reprogram myself to start thinking like, there's more than one answer, right? Just because everybody else is coming up with this, that doesn't mean that's the only answer. So when you ask genius, I'm thinking people that are super creative.
What's interesting, and we're going to touch on this later, is it's the things that we do naturally, that come to us naturally, that we tend to diminish and be like, well, that's not genius. But to somebody else, adding 2 + 2, putting the pieces together logically does not make sense, and it's not practical. And so it's relative is what I'm really getting at, right? And we tend to see it in other people, even as you identified it in your coworker, but we always want to look outward for things and never turn inward to see what we have that's unique to us.
Facts, yeah.
And you know who the number one answer is that I get though? The number one answer that I hear most times about who people think of when they hear genius?
Like Einstein, maybe? Yeah.
Albert Einstein.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, yeah.
The thing about that, I'm not trying to take away, I have an interesting story about Einstein, but before I get to him and talk about his upbringing, as I've, seen some documentaries on him, when people ascribe, first of all, you and I got the shaved bald head. We look nothing like Einstein, right?
Right.
Nobody's going to confuse us for Einstein.
Right.
And there's something about when you associate genius to somebody that looks nothing like you, you at the same time disassociate from yourself.
That's true.
So the two people who I've interviewed, the two types of people who I've interviewed that are quicker to say, yeah, I'm a genius, are one, to your point, the creatives. I've interviewed a couple. I got a creative in my neighborhood, and he was like, "No, I'm a genius though. He's the producer."
Right.
And that Kanye, he's not quite, and I don't know why.
He's on his way though.
Yeah. So, and I've seen him in the lab. I've seen him chop up, and I'm like, yeah, you got some skills, man. So, and he wasn't arrogant about it at all. He was like, no, I'm a genius though, and it's because that creativity, the ability to think outside of the box. But the other people, very interestingly enough, are the ones who they identify somebody that they were related to. Like, hey, my mom is a genius. My dad is a genius. My child is a genius. And so because they can see it in somebody that they can relate to, that, they have a connection with, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever, I believe that gives them the ability to see it in themselves better.
Makes sense, yeah.
And so the question becomes, even as we're getting into, next month is Black History Month, and I've gone through and I'm preparing to do a couple of different presentations where I'm identifying lesser known innovators and inventors that created like things that we use every day. Like the automated elevator was made by African American. The heart stent was improved by an African American.
Right.
The resistor that we use in integrated circuits was improved upon, and the design that's still in use today was by an African American. The game cartridge system that we grew up on, that whole system was created by an African American. The Super Soaker was created
there you go.
by an African American, but we don't know their names. And so how can we and the people who are coming up behind us begin to aspire towards greater things when we can't see the genius, that's the invisible genius that's around us? It's like the invisible man, Ralph Wilson all over again, right? So what I begin to do is I begin to try and make genius relatable, because the thing that we associate also with genius with Einstein is that it has to be academic. It's somehow related to your IQ. It's somehow related to your GPA. So if you don't have a high GPA or a high IQ, or you don't even know what your IQ is, then you're like, nah, I'm not the one. Right?
Gotcha.
And I want to change that, because Here's a quote that I'm about to share with you from Einstein. I think you know what? I'm gonna give you a little bit of Einstein's background, then I'm gonna give you the quote. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So interestingly enough, Einstein, when he was a kid, he was one of them kids that got that note home to the parents that was like, hey, you might want to make sure Einstein work with his hands because he's not that smart. He's not that bright.
Right.
He's a different type of thinker. I believe that he was a creative thinker, and I'll share why in a little bit. I think he definitely thought out of the box. He was the one who came up with thought experiments and would envision what it would look like to do some things. Like, for example, even when he got into college, post-secondary education, the professors would kick him out of the classroom because while they're lecturing, he's looking out the window and they thought he was dunking. They're like, "You're not paying attention, Einstein. Like, get out."
Mm-hmm.
He was doing though. He was imagining what it would look like to ride a beam of light from the sun to the earth and looking over and seeing another beam of light. And in doing that, he came up with the theory of relativity, the thing that we still are proving in science and in space and astronomy today, the thing that gives him the label of genius to most people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he didn't accept these diminishing labels, that, you know, he might have been called ADD or ADHD for all we know back in the day.
Right, yeah.
And imagine if he had accepted that, like, yeah, I don't think like everybody else and something's wrong with me. Instead, there was something in him that was like, no, I got something to contribute. I got something to offer. It's just different. It's not that it's different isn't bad. It's just different.
Different, right. Fair enough, yes. So
here's this quote. You got to let me know if you've heard this quote before, and then let me know how it hits you. How do you process it? What is it saying to you? All right. Mm-hmm. You ready?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Here you go. And this purportedly comes from Einstein, so he knew something a little more than I think we outside of physics. He said, look, if you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
Wow. Yeah, I've never heard that before, but that's profound. Yeah.
Talk to me. How's that hitting you? Why are you saying that?
It hits me because like I'm trying to think of somebody that's like, we know that's really good at something. Let's pick Michael Jordan. Some people think best basketball player ever. So that's his genius, right? That's his genius.
It's talent, but yeah, I'm feeling you.
Right, but if you say to Jordan, you judge them on, now I don't know, like how well he did with like
baseball,
like swimming. Well, I mean, baseball, I think he was still pretty good, but you know, let's pick something that we don't think he would be good at. Let's say swimming or just something random, and that was the measure of success, and that's what you judged him on. Then all of a sudden he's a failure.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And so and so you belittle them so much to where like they lose motivation, and what they have to offer, the world misses out on it, right? Because you know, because the label or you know, just the way you reacted to them.
Right. Now, he wasn't a good basketball. His brother was better than him when he was
right.
Younger.
He always says that. Yeah.
He's one of these crazy ones like Kobe, where if you tell him he can't do something, he'll be like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. So even if somebody would say you're not a good swimmer, he would have probably
would have figured it out.
Right. He got like Michael Phelps over here, right? Yeah. So, but no, you completely internalize that correctly, right? Because a fish, I mean, I know things have been weird for the past 3 years with COVID, and I know things have been kind of off, but I don't think anybody has forgotten that fish belong in water.
Right.
I don't think that things have gotten so topsy-turvy in the world that we're seeing, you know, I see trees right now. If I see a fish in a tree right now, Don, I know it's time to get off the planet.
What?
Something is off. Something is
right. Yeah. Right.
So we know inherently that fish belong in water. So if you go judging it outside of its, you know, it's designed, it's streamlined, it has fins, gills, and scales. It's designed for the water. But if you take it out of its element and then try to say, okay, we'll climb this tree, you're missing what it was put on this planet to do.
Fair enough.
And, you know, it gets back to what I talked about. There are people who see us, Don, and limit us because of our height, because of our color, and say, yeah, you must be this. I'll never forget this, Don. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but I went to the University of Delaware. I was an engineer like you. The majority of my scholarship came from merit scholarship, engineering, and all that other type of stuff. when I went to go accept my scholarship, I'm just sitting around mingling, and this person comes up to me and she said, "Oh, scholarship, football, right?" I was like, "Nah, actually engineering." And I just watched her mind kind of just unravel, and I was like, "Yep,
Yeah, like, whoa, you don't fit the mold. Don't fit my stereotype.
Yeah, don't put that on
My
me."
bias.
Yeah, and there's no disrespect because I know you play football, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, don't
No,
size
I
me up.
completely understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Like, we all have prejudices. It's how we
That's,
make sense of the world.
mhm.
But when you meet a person, you have to put aside your prejudgment and then receive them for who they are instead of saying like, nope, this is all you're going to be in my world to make it make sense for me.
Right, yeah. And then, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Oh, for some perverse person who thinks that a fish is better off served climbing a tree, somebody said this a couple of interviews ago, and I thought it was dope. They was like, yeah, I almost feel like a predator would do that. A predator would say, hey, tree, go climb this, hey, fish, go climb this tree.
Straight. Yeah.
Because it's going to get a meal in about 10
Right.
minutes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Right. So who is it that's out here that's mislabeling us, mislabeling people? And if we're not careful when we get around somebody like that, because we don't know our own worth and our own value and why we've been created, then we may in turn begin to accept it like, well, maybe that is who I am. And I have a big problem with that. People not knowing their identity and then acquiescing to what society says we're supposed to be. Because
Man,
again,
even worse, like the thing that because I tend to be very introspective when I consume information. So I'm here like looking at myself like, dang, like I've made some mistakes with parenting. So for example, like I'll pick my son Ben, he's 14. So we put him in sports, since he was really young. And he's not an aggressive kid by nature, but to excel at sports, you got to have some aggression. People say that dog in you. Yeah. And I get on him for not being that. But what if he was meant to do something, let's say pastoring people, for example. So you need to be hardwired with patience and calmness and empathy, not like super aggression. Right. So now I'm looking like, it's one thing, people mislabeling you out in the street, but when you do it to your own kids, like, so that's why I'm taking this to mean like, I need to be more like conscious and observant and open-minded to like, just because that's what I did growing up, that doesn't mean, because it's not, she doesn't just have my genes. She's got my wife's genes, grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So.
Ooh, Don, you're getting into some stuff now. So I love this. Like the introspection is good because we make mistakes as parents. This is, I call raising children a social experiment. We don't know if we made the right things until they're like 20 or 30, right? So they turn out as adults and we're like, oh man, okay, yeah, that's good. That's that decision I made. But they are resilient. I marvel at my kids because I've made mistakes too, and how resilient they are. They're really resilient when they're young physically, but mentally they're resilient around that age that your son is too, Ben.
Well, so, I hope so.
He is. Trust me, he is. And they're most resilient when we are big enough to admit when we're wrong. Because it's one thing to do something wrong and then your pride comes in and you're like, well, I got to keep doing it that way. I'm not going to relent. But it's another thing when you go to your son and relent and say, hey, look, why don't we try something different? They rebound by leaps and bounds when we do that.
Gotcha.
I know from personal experience. Okay, so there's some encouragement for you right there.
There you go. Appreciate that. Yeah.
So you touched on generational DNA basically, and that's going to get me into these three components that I have in my book that outline genius. So we're going to talk about genius from three perspectives. We've broken down the word, and now we're going to redefine it by passion, talent, and purpose. And the talent that we talk about is generational. It's something in us that's been trying to break free, that's been trying to come up. Maybe our forefathers didn't have the resources and the opportunities that we have to be able to manifest it in such a way that we can really grasp a hold of it. And we're probably already operating it, but again, we it's so common to us that we're like, oh, that's just that I do, right? So we're gonna get to that in a minute with talent. I want to start with passion, okay? Because I'm gonna do the same thing with genius that I did with passion. I'm gonna ask you, Don, what words come to mind when you hear the word passion?
I guess like dedication, commitment, joy, longevity, just hunger.
Hunger.
Yeah.
All right. All good words, right? And all those words are gonna be referenced or inferenced at some point in the next 5 minutes.
Okay.
But it's not gonna come where you think it's gonna come from. This is a paradigm shift. Most people say love when they start talking about passion. Do what you love when you get into your career, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I read this book that changed my perspective and informed me to the point where I now talk about it as it relates to genius. The book was called The Assignment by Mike Murdoch.
Okay.
This is what Mike said. Have you heard of it?
No. I'm just saying because I'm gonna check it out.
Check it out. It's a quick read. It's not real.
That's perfect then. Yeah.
So without ruining too much of it, Mike says, hey, look, if you want to figure out what you've been put on this planet to do, you need to actually figure out what your Popeye moment is. You're old enough to get the reference to Popeye. Popeye would be getting beat up by Bluto, beat up by his circumstances, whatever it is.
Crack that can open.
He would crack that can of spinach open. But you know what he would say before he cracked the can open? He would say, I've had all I can stand. I can't stand no more. And so he's like, what's your Popeye moment? What's the moment where you've experienced it enough where you're like, I got to do something about this. I can't stand experiencing this. I can't stand seeing others experiencing this. The word that he actually uses is the exact opposite of love. He says, if you want to get into what you're assigned to do, what your passion is, figure out what you hate. Yeah, exactly. Because he said the reason why you hate it is because you were put on this planet to do something about it. And that's how it gets your attention. That's how when you see, and most of the time it comes from trauma from your youth. Something happened to you when you were younger that bothered you, that made you feel like a fish out of water, that made you feel like I keep trying to do a thing and something's not working, something's not connecting, and I don't feel right. You know what I'm saying? Like if you were to ask if this fish was sentient and you were to ask it what it hated, it would probably tell you, I hate this tree.
Right,
this tree,
right.
Like I'm about to die trying to climb this tree. And I feel like something's off about it, right? And so when you begin to think about it from that perspective, you may go back to a time where you'll see a thing and you'll be like, man, somebody should do something about that. First time you see it. Second, third, fourth, fifth time, you get a little more emotional about it. Man, somebody should really do something about that. Like somebody should, guess who? If you keep on, every time you see it, if you keep commenting on it, guess who the somebody is?
You. He's like, you.
It's you. Stop looking around. Stop looking for somebody else who's active in their genius. You know that a lot of people who we ascribe genius to are dead. Or they're not in the same environment as you, so they're not affected by what you're affected by. So if you're waiting for the geniuses to address the thing that's broken, you might be waiting for a long time. And if everybody, Don, is waiting and looking to the person beside them to fix the thing that's broken, well, that explains why the world is broken. Would you agree that the world is broken?
Yeah, fair enough. Wow, yeah.
We don't have fish in the tree yet, but there's a lot of fish in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that this was revolutionary because we say things like, I hate that with a passion. And when you tap into that thing, Don, it's like the gas in your tank. You won't care what it is. You won't care how big it is. You will make sure that you address it head on. You don't either go through it, over it, around it, under it. I'm gonna get at this thing. Nothing's gonna stop me. I don't care if I chip away at it in small chunks or if I take a lop, just lop it off in one fell swoop. It reminds me of like David finding Goliath, right?
Right.
Everybody else was cowering from this 9 foot tall giant. And David, this teenager, was like, yo, y'all just gonna let him talk to y'all like that and disrespect the God that we all serve? Get out the way. I'm gonna handle him right now. And that's why David was called a man after God's own heart, because he was like, yo, when I see evil in the world, when I see something that's out of order in the world, I'm gonna do something about it.
There you
right.
go.
So go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing. Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you a real life example. Can I do that?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Again, man, this is I love telling this story. I love that I had this experience because it's like transformative. So I had a friend who was a elementary school principal, and she had these 10 little boys, 10 little minority boys. And she was like, Reggie, they're struggling, man. Like, can you come in and talk to them? Just spend like a week, like one day out of the week with them. I was like, bet, I'll come on a Friday. And I was workshopping this whole genius concept. And so I came in there, observed them for a couple of days, and I was like, hey, look, we're gonna talk about something today. But before I talk about it, I just want to tell you guys, you all are geniuses.
Wow.
They was like, man, who are you talking to? Like they got offended. They got mad. Because what I found out, Don, was that all these boys were on IEPs. We would have called it special ed back in the day.
Right,
But they
yeah.
were individual education plans. And what I didn't say is they were in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, all in the same classroom all day. Let you know something's not right, something's out of sorts.
Oh yeah, oh, yeah.
They were literally fish out of water, right? But they had these labels that had been put on them to explain why they acted the way they acted. ADD, ADHD, mentally disturbed, disruptive in class, right? So they were used to the negative affirmations, so much so that when I came with a positive one, it was like,
yeah, yeah, that offended them. Wow,
it offended them. And I also saw was like, now if you stay with this label of genius, that means somebody's going to hold you accountable to do something greater than what you may be willing to do. Nobody expects anything of you with these labels.
Right, yeah.
And so I didn't spend too long on it because I was like, all right, you didn't like that. But here's where Mike Murdoch came in and really helped me, because if it's one thing that you can talk to teenagers and preteens about, is what they hate. So I was like, man, all right, you never see the genius. What do you hate? And they was like,
they got a list.
You asking me what I hate? I'm like, yeah, tell me. It was like, you don't want to know what I hate. I said, yes, I do. And the teachers in the background, like, oh, snap. Like,
why are you going there with
this guy? Right? Can you take a guess? Now, listen, Don, these 10 little boys who could never agree on anything, what game to play, when to play it, whose seat was what, who hit who in the head, who whatever, they all universally got on the same page and told me the one thing that they all hated. Can you imagine what it was?
I can tell you what I would say is people telling me what to do.
Now, that's getting in the right vein. Where is it that people are telling them what to do every day?
Is in school, in that class. They probably hate that class.
Nah, they say school. They took it.
They hate school.
Like, you hate school, Mr. Key. Now what you gonna do? And they you messed your whole workshop up, didn't you? I was like, actually, because if you pay attention to what I'm telling you, that the thing that you hate is the thing that you were meant to fix.
Fix the school.
You telling me that you hate school is telling me that I'm looking at 10 future educators, and their eyes real big, and they started backing up. I was like, nah, come closer though. Where you going? Let's get started. So I said, look, I get that you hate school. Making them feel like a fish out of water, and we've already implied this before, but if a fish stays out of water for too long, what's going to happen?
It's going to die, yeah.
It's going to die. And so to me, not just in these 10 little boys, but in a lot of people, I see dying genius, because the passion helps define what your element is. It helps you figure out what your water is. Some people do belong in trees, right? But you're not going to know where you belong until you figure out what you hate. And so what I told them was, look, man, I'm here to revitalize, resuscitate, resurrect dying genius. That's one of the things we do in this planet, right? And so I said, let me explain to you why you're future educators. I don't know if you know this, Don, but there are 8 different learning styles. Did you know that?
No, I just know a couple of them. But you mean like auditory, visual, sensory? Like, I just know a few, yeah.
At most, schools only teach from 3.
Wow.
Audio, if you're verbal, if you can listen and process information that way, that's one way, of course. If you're audio and verbal are the same. If you're visual, and then the left brain thinker, that logical thinker, you're probably a left brain thinker, which is nothing to do with that at all. But if you're a right brain thinker and you're in the middle of brain theology,
it's like,
you're like, this
foreign language. Yeah.
This is, I don't understand anything that you're saying. And if you go into an environment day after day, and it's literally like somebody's speaking another language, you can be like, man, I hate this place. This place makes me feel like I'm dumb. This place makes me feel like it's out of water, right? So I said, let's talk about some of these other learning styles that I think you have. I said, hey, one learning style is kinesthetic. A kinesthetic learner has to move to process information. But what happens when you're moving in class and you're told, hey, sit down.
Yeah.
You're like, well, dang it. Now you're suppressing my learning. I don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our boys, for whatever reason, are kinesthetic learners, because athletes are a reflection of a kinesthetic learner.
Right.
You get an athlete out on the field, out on the court where they can process information while moving
really
at the same
quickly.
time,
Yeah, no, you're right.
they will excel.
Mhm.
We see it all the time, but we're
Absolutely,
just that this is a learning style that they're manifesting, that they're illustrating, right? So that's one learning style. The other one is exploratory or expeditionary, which means
Mhm.
I can touch stuff. I got to put my
Right.
hands on stuff to understand. But when I go to put my hands on stuff, hey, keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah, don't touch. Yeah,
Dang, man, you crushing me. I don't understand what's. And then of course we talked about the right brain thinker, like Einstein was, and he was told, "Hey, look, you might want to just go ahead and chalk it up and get a vocation and work with your hands. You're gonna be a plumber or something."
Mhm.
Because the schools are so stuck in their way of doing things that they're leaving children behind, even though that's the pledge to not do that.
Mhm.
So here's what I told him. I was like, look, instead of running away from school and being like, I hate this place, they got to flip it and run towards it and turn their learning style into a teaching style.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now you're going to present what's missing, because the school system is broken as well. And
Right.
now you're going to reach another learning,
Excuse me.
learning style, kinesthetic, expeditionary. If you're moving around in the lesson and there's other people moving around, and maybe the school system changes and puts kinesthetic learners with kinesthetic teachers,
Right.
now the system is going to start getting fixed.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm like, that's revolutionary.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's like a game changer. And so how many systems, and by the way, the thing that you hate is never something small. It's always going to be something systemic, something large. That's why I compared it to a David and Goliath type situation. So
Gotcha.
where there's human beings involved, somebody's getting marginalized, somebody's getting left out.
Absolutely.
Somebody's on a performance review, right? You don't fit in here. You're not learning stuff the way we need you to learn, and so we need you to get it together, or you won't be fired, right? So there's a lot of stuff to hate. There's a lot of stuff to fix, but there's a lot of people who are in their element and not realizing it, or have at least interacted with their element, the thing that will define their assignment, the thing that will step into their genius. So Don, I got to ask you, man, like, what is it that you hate? A lot of people are uncomfortable with that word, but what do you hate though?
Yeah, I guess it's selfishness. If I were to pick it in a word, I hate selfishness.
Okay.
I don't like it when I see it. It makes me uncomfortable. Yeah.
And so selfishness is the motivation for a lot of, well, it's the motivation, but it goes hand in hand with some of the larger systemic issues that are wrong with this country, like racism, bigotry, because people are so selfish that they're like, it's all about me.
The only word about them, and they're not worried about anybody else. And hey, that really bothers me. I hate to see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, the system says that you're less than me because of the color of your skin. I'm cool with that because it gives me a leg up on over you, and I'm worried about itself. So that's a good thing to hate, Don.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, if you're in your house and something gets broken, and you're like, you know what, I think I can fix this. What do you start looking for to fix what's broken in your house?
Oh, a toolbox.
Right. Yeah. You're gonna look for the right tool for the right job. And so the right tool for us is that generational talent that we touched on briefly. And in fact, if we just go ahead and jump to the end, your purpose in life is to figure out what your talent is and recognize it as a tool to fix what's broken.
Which is I like how you put that together.
When you do that, you'll unlock your genius. Now, it sounds easy, but it's very much, even though it's 3 components, it's like putting together like a 500 piece puzzle, right? Because you're not going to get it right the first time. The biggest
it's a little bit of trial and error in there, yeah. But at least you kind of know what you're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, I got the right piece. I got to shift it this way and figure it out. And I tell kids, like, failure is just the first attempt in learning. It's not a fail as long as you learn from it. That was my problem in engineering. I wanted to get it right the first time, and when I failed,
it's just, and especially if you're used to being like one of the best students and getting it right the first time. There's levels to stuff. No, you've graduated. No, you're on the video game, you're on a higher level. So of course you're going to die fast on this higher level until you figure it out.
Absolutely.
And some of it, to be honest with you, Reggie, is UD style, because I've talked to other educators and they were saying Delaware has a reputation they have a weed out approach.
Oh, most definitely they did.
Yeah. And there are other schools that don't do it that way.
Really?
And so I didn't know that, nobody told me about that when I went there, when I was applying and all that. Yeah, their approach to learning is different.
Yeah, I just assumed all colleges did that. Like they
No. So I met a guy, there's a thing called a PhD project. I was considering getting my doctorate and I went to it. And when I told him where I went to school, he's like, oh, y'all got that weed out policy. Like, I think he said like Georgia Tech is one that's like that too. So there's schools that are notorious for it. And so what tends to happen is the GPAs are artificially lower because they've got like only a certain percentage can get A's and B's and they try to push it down, while there's some schools that, no, we want everybody to learn. We want everybody to look good and to enjoy the process.
I've always said that, but I didn't call it a weed out process. I just taught, I was like, you know what? They had a curve for a reason because they wanted to highlight the people who this just came to them naturally and put them in a lab. Get that person right there. I remember it was a dude who would be asleep. He'd be like, he'd get up and be like, oh yeah, now you meant to do X, Y, and Z, and then he'd go back to sleep. And the teacher would be like, oh snap, like, yeah, he's right. And years later, I saw a picture of him, man, they had sucked this dude dry. His eyes was sunken in. I was like, they got him working in this R&D lab like 24/7, man. They just like, yeah, we got you. I very much agree with UD's approach that they did there. But let's talk about this talent for a second, because a lot of times we'll recognize talent just like we recognize genius in other people. We'll recognize talent in other people, and we'll recognize that it's generational, but we won't see it in ourselves. Like we'll look at entertainers, we'll look at athletes, and we're like, yeah, they come from a family of singers. Everybody in that family played the piano. Everybody in that family, all the men are basketball players, and the girls are too, right? But that's just how talent operates. Talent looks for the outlet when the resources and the opportunities and the timing are right, and it'll manifest. And I'm sure that, the best example I can give really quickly is, I started writing at UD my freshman year. And now, I'm an author. And what I began to tell my children at the ages of 7 and 9, I'm like, hey, look, that is a wordsmith. You're probably a wordsmith too. And they believed it. And I began to tell them that they're geniuses. And at 7 and 9, they both published books.
Wow. Awesome.
And their books were selling better than mine. And it's not to brag on them, it's to showcase this genealogy. And then as I started to talk to my mom about my dad, I mean, I've known my dad, but he was sick at the time. She was like, yeah, he would write me poetry, and your grandmother wrote.
Where it came from.
Like, wow, see, it didn't come out of anywhere. And so, but when it's so common to us, we'll overlook it. Like I gotta go to a quick Bible example again. Moses. Like when Moses realized what his purpose in life was, which was to free God's people out of Egypt, he was like, nah, I'm not the one. He was like, hey, look, I stutter, God. Like, I don't think I'm the right one. I don't speak well. He's like, dude, who made your mouth? Like, who you talking to? Like, don't worry about that. I'll give you your brother. You're going to meet Aaron. You're going to link up with him, and he'll speak for you. And Moses was still making excuses, still complaining. So God was like, dude, what's in your hand? He was like, it's just my staff. He's like, man, put that staff on the ground. He put it on the ground and turned into a snake.
Snake, yeah.
Up by his tail, he picked it up and turned back into a staff. He was like, you got everything you need in your hand. I'm going to perform miracles by this staff, and it's going to let the people know that I'm doing the thing, and Pharaoh going to let my people go after 10 manifestations of plagues that are going to come by your hand. But he overlooked it. He was like, I just got this old raggedy staff. That's how we do it, our talent. Or I'm going to go back to David. David, when he finally said, hey, look, I'm going to take care of this giant, man. I've been killing lions and bears, protecting my dad's sheep. I know I'm a boy, but give me my slingshot. I'm going to show you something. Saul, the king at the time, was like, hey, take my armor. And David was like, don't give me that. You're going to get me killed. Like, people will try to try to put their talent or what they think your talent should be.
Yeah.
David was like, doesn't fit me. You a grown man. If I go out here, I'm going to be immobile, and I'm not going to be able to move.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I need my slingshot and 5 smooth stones. I'm going to show you something. He knew what his talent was. And so I'm going to turn it to you again and say, Don, what is your talent?
So for me, like one of the things I know comes fairly easy is teaching. So I come from generations of teachers. So just to give you an example, on my dad's side, they were 9. His dad was the head of the teachers training college. That's my grandfather on that side. My grandmother, his mom, she was a teacher. 8 of her kids were in education.
Wow.
8 of the 9 in education. And on my mom's side, my grandmother, she was a teacher. Turns out she hated teaching, but I didn't know that. But it just so happened back then, because she was born in 1920, that generation, you know, Black people, especially Black women, there weren't many options.
Sure.
So if you were, like they say, bright, like then you could become a teacher or like a nurse. It was limited what you could do. So she taught. So for me, it comes easy. So like my genius or my talent to me is, sorry, I'm using it interchangeably, but for me, it's being able to look at a concept, simplify it, and communicate it.
I see that.
I enjoy it. I mean, yeah. So and it comes fairly natural for me.
To your point, you already talked about that you're a logical thinker, and you see pieces and put them together. And I mean, you majored in engineering; it makes perfect sense, right?
Right.
And so the thing becomes like, how do you apply that to the thing that you hate, the passion that you have about people being selfish? And what I hear for you, Don, is that you have an opportunity to teach people on emotional intelligence, because if you have emotional intelligence, then if you have the right balance of it, then you have empathy, and it makes you put yourself in someone else's shoes so that you have less focus on self. And even more importantly, just like how you're identifying at least 3 generations, I've heard 2 or 3 generations of teachers in your family, and you talked about your son, and you said, hey, look, maybe my son is a pastor. I don't know if you noticed, but especially in the church that we go to, we link pastor and teacher together. Like there are 4 offices: apostle, prophet, evangelist, and pastor teacher. So it's ironic that you said that, you know, maybe he's meant to be pastoring.
Right. That is ironic. Yeah.
On the inside of him.
Mm-hmm.
That clearly is coming from the generations past, and he might not have the same passion as you. That's fine, but if we can get him to tap into, like, what do you hate, Ben? And he begins to tell you, like, all right, let's find a way to begin to logically break apart.
So at least get him to know what he's looking for, because a lot of times, you know, if you can just give people guidance of like, you know, then when they'll know it when they see it, because they have some idea what they're looking for.
At this age, man, it's priceless too, because if we give them an idea, they're gonna reject it. Hey, you should do this. Nah, no, I'm not. But if you plant the seed so that they think it's their idea, then they're like, yeah, you know what? I think that's a good idea. And you can just sit back like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted you to do. But we gotta, it's tricky being a parent of a 14-year-old and trying to get them to
exactly. Trust me.
And make it feel like it's theirs. Yeah, no, I know. You got the same thing as fun. The other thing that it makes me think about is the fact that when, oh man, I might have lost it, Don. So we're talking about just understanding emotional intelligence. We're talking about his passion is going to be different than yours, more than likely.
Right.
But that talent and the ability to put together this puzzle and figure out how it works, this is how you can determine if you need to go to college, what your major should be. Because maybe, you know, college, we came up in an era where college had been denied to our parents. And so it was a must. You got to get your higher learning, go further than I went. And I get that. But now we're in a place where there's so much accessible to us. And there's so much that there's so much opportunity and resources that our children have that 2 generations, 3 generations past didn't, that maybe college is not the path for them. I'm an advocate for college.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah. But if you go to college, it would help if you pick the right major. I picked the wrong major. I picked it for money. I was trying to get paid.
Right. Yeah.
But had I known what my genius was, I could have picked something different and still, because you know, you're doing nothing with. I mean, Maya had homework the other day that was talking about circuits and circuits and parallel, and I was like, I can help you. I can help you with that. Yeah. But by and large, I don't deal with engineering anymore, right? So this is like, you know, really a powerful tool for, you know, profession, as you choose your profession, as you choose your career, as you're choosing what major you should enter in college. And it's just a way to have self-affirmation. I'm not saying, now, Don, that you should go around introducing yourself as genius like Wile E. Coyote, super genius, right? But
have it on my business card, like,
right,
in case you
exactly.
didn't know. In case you didn't know, like.
But it's so good for just understanding why you've been placed where you've been placed, why you've gone through what you've been through, and then understanding how you can impact the community around you, others around you. And when people begin to see you operating in your genius, it gives them permission to do the same. And now it's like activations. Now, maybe one of my guests, he said, look, I got zeros and nines. I'm not good at everything. What I'm good at, I give myself a 9. So I never give myself a 10 because that means I'm gonna get complacent and there's always room to do more. But it's like the places that I'm a 0 at, I'm a 0 and I'm cool with that because somebody else has a 9 where my 0 is.
On that, right.
So that when our geniuses come together, now we're doing a thing together that we can do, apart. So everybody is accessing this genius and realizing there's something on the inside of them that we can begin to change the world around us and begin to fix the brokenness that we all see.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, what you're saying makes complete sense to me. Yeah.
My man, I thought it would. Yeah. So here's how I know if it makes sense to you or not, though. This is be closing out. I told you I'm gonna end how I started. Don, do you see yourself as a genius?
I'll say this. I know I have some genius in me.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it in me. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We have our post-production assistant coming in now. She does all of my post-production thing that comes in later. So, hey, Maya. So look, Don, I appreciate you taking the time to come through and listen. I think we've pushed the needle a little bit towards the genius mark. I feel like you're going to continue to break this down and think about it long afterwards, and that's good. I just want to challenge us to just see what's already on the inside of us and just begin to put it together. And so in that, man, it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for being my genius guest. This has been Don Ainsworth and Reggie Key, the guest and host of Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, presented by Ink Well Spoken. And Don, it's my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.
Pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.